Hello, welcome to Talk HR UK. I'm Simon Geere, and when I'm not talking to HR leaders on this podcast, I am helping HR directors, managing directors, and CEOs source and recruit the best HR talent in the southeast of the UK. And today we are joined by Frances Marlow. Hello, Frances.
Hi.
Hi, Frances. I've known Frances quite a long time. We met primarily when you were working with AXA Partners in Red Hill. And I've watched Frances really push an awful lot of HR matters forward in that organisation, from sort of cultural pieces, site pieces. So it'll be good to hear a little bit about that. But most importantly, Frances has a new role now, which she'll tell us about in a moment. One point I wanted to add is that Frances was my last client meeting planned before lockdown. I think it was the Friday before lockdown, and I was due to travel to your HQ in Sutton to meet you for a coffee. And then the world changed, and perhaps will stay changed forever. But it's lovely to reconnect with you today. So thanks for your time, Frances. Tell us a little bit about your current role and organisation, please.
Yeah, so my current role is I'm HR Director for Harvey & Thompson. So many people probably not know Harvey & Thompson. On the high street it is as being a H&T pawnbrokers. We've been established since 1897. And so our core activity is really around pawnbroking. Having said that, we also will buy items from people. We sell jewellery, both pre-owned and new. We offer loans, foreign exchange and Western Union. So we have quite a broad range of products, but very much on a high street, 250 stores across the UK, right. Just over 1,400 people. So a really great organisation, very customer-centric. Actually an organisation, I've always worked in customer-facing environments, but never known anything quite like the loyalty and relationships that our people build with our customers. So that's really, really fantastic. And as an HR director, joined the team really to help show the strategy, really support the business in terms of its growth ambition. And really going through a bit of a process of, doing lots of things that HR people do. So trying to digitalise some of the basic transactions that we carry out, really trying to add value. And I suppose, we have a real sense of family. So I do think that we're a big family, and we really want to enable people to really grow, to be what they want to be. And so there's a big focus on development and training, and also just making sure there's a really good environment for people to come to work every day.
Thank you. Excellent. So it's a very different business to where you were before, because obviously you were at Sainsbury's for years. That was your sort of career stomping ground, wasn't it? And then Stora Enso, AXA, now through to Harvey & Thompson. So as you say, always customer led, but this feels like a very different challenge. I remember when we were talking just before you secured this role, and you said, I think you might be surprised by what I'm doing next. And you were right, but I'm delighted it's going so well, although a bit of a baptism by fire with the timing, unfortunately, for you and many people with new roles in 2020, really.
Yeah, I think actually, to be honest, it's many people have asked me the same question, which is about the baptism of fire. And I think I was lucky enough to probably have completed about 10 weeks before we knew that COVID was going to be even bigger issue than maybe we originally thought. So I'd completed my induction, I'd had the chance to meet people, had been whizzing around the country, visiting stores and all of our different locations. And actually then having something like COVID, there's nothing like a crisis to get stuck in. So you really don't have a choice. And actually, interestingly, some of my training at AXA about dealing with crisis management actually really came in handy. So when you're faced with that, then I think you quickly build relationships. You are pulled into activity on a daily basis. And that does help, actually. I think otherwise it's easy to spend a lot of time trying to work out what are the right things to do before you embark on them. But luckily, I think I almost come to the point of really being clear about what our strategy should be, what I wanted to do with my structure at the same time. So actually what we've managed to do actually through lockdown is that whilst we closed our shops for a period of time, we carried on working very, very hard to reopen the stores and to get back in trading. But also it gave us an opportunity to catch up, review processes, create greater consistency, and I suppose get our house in order whilst that business as usual activity was sort of almost switched off. So actually, you know, great opportunity, because that equally wouldn't have been a normal opportunity that I would have had.
Understood. I think a few people have said it's a great time to cleanse processes and restructure some of the way things work, isn't it? While business is unfortunately paused. Well, we're going to start today different to many of the other podcasts we've done. Actually, is we're going to start with the future. So being very positive, I like to think. But I mean, we're, as you say, the stores are opening, you know, and are open now. You are trading back as you were, although I'm sure with social distance, health and safety factors in place. What are your key HR challenges for the remainder of this year, really, within Harvey and Thompson at this point?
I think the first one is supporting the move back to business as usual. So as you can imagine, my HR team have been very key in terms of all of the advice and the support. We work very closely with our health and safety manager, really trying to make sure that you're balancing the government advice against what we need to do as a business. And as you say, ultimately, we're trying to protect both our customers as well as our employees. So even when we reopened stores, we didn't do it until we were really comfortable that they were going to be okay. And if we do have any incidents, then we have really strong protocols about what we do and how we do it. So that's the first thing. I think the second big project we've got on, which is now starting to really bite, is we've agreed to invest in a new HR system. So at the moment we have quite an old system. A lot of it is not automated. There is no employee or manager self-service. So we are in the process of scoping that. It's in the build phase at the moment, with user acceptance testing starting in September. So that for us is really critical, with a view that we'll launch it probably the end of Q1 next year. So really excited about that. So, and a big piece of work, not just in terms of the system design, but more the change management. So how do we make sure that people use it? How do we make sure people understand how to get the best out of it? Really to make sure that the investment we're making really does pay back. And what we're hoping is that therefore, from a really end-to-end, from a candidate approaching us all the way through the life cycle, so the point somebody will leave, is to really make sure that that experience from all of your sort of transactions as an employee is handled really, really smoothly and automated as much as possible.
That's great for retail as well, isn't it? Because I'll be honest, you know, a lot of my experience of working with retail clients, sometimes a little behind the curve with technology.
Yeah, so we are really excited. We actually they actually bought a learning and management system in, I think, probably about a year, 18 months ago. And I think that for me is always an interesting intro, because that starts to give people a sense of, if we can provide technology, it doesn't just enable you to do what you have to do, but it enables you to do more than that. And I think that was a small first step. The next step is certainly to get this full system coverage, which will also help us with how my team operate, but also really helpful for managers, and also making sure that our employees have got real transparency about their own data. They can own their own data, and we'll make sure that those will link together. So that's really exciting. And the rest of it is really all the work that we did during COVID, when we weren't operating as business as usual, is now we're out launching new guidelines, some new policies, really trying to, I suppose, focus on consistency. I think throughout my career, and I honestly have to say that it doesn't matter which business I've operated in, whilst you can have policies and processes, the consistency of application can always be varied. And I suppose we all know that to create the right environment for people with the right sense of fairness, you need to know that those are being operated at a consistent basis. So we've just launched something around absence management, for example. Okay. So yes, we do lots of absence management today, But this is more about reminding people why it's important, how to do it, and what support they can get from the HR team as well.
That's key, actually. And as you say, in a multi-site retail organisation, I always found every store is like a little micro culture of its own, isn't it? And some leaders there will be brilliant with corporate processes, and others perhaps less enthusiastic.
Yeah, and I think some of it, and this is our other challenge, is one of the other pieces of work we're doing to the end of the year, is really starting a process of research to really think hard about what is our management development activity. So we have some, but we need to build it in a much more cohesive way to really address the needs of our people. And in many cases, our managers, I would say they do it with the best intent. And it's my job and my team's job to make sure that they do understand what they're doing, why they're doing it, and the consequences of what they're doing. And then it comes back to almost this sort of family culture of we really do care, and we do want people to be okay. So it's just trying to make sure that that is then very consistent, so people don't get a varied experience.
Understood. So there's a lot for your team to do going forward, you and your team. So bearing that in mind, then, the skills you think that HR professionals are going to need to perhaps develop and hone for life post this kind of 2020 COVID era, what do you think people need to improve and develop?
I think the first thing is around agility. I think we have been tested beyond belief in terms of, I think COVID, it was a really good example of where within a 24-hour period, you could get updates, new advice, different advice, and your ability to absorb that and to think through consequences and to react, and knowing that almost if you don't, you have too many unanswered questions, and it creates a lot of uncertainty for people. So I think the first thing is agility, which is that ability to just really roll with whatever is being thrown at you. And I know that I think I've always been lucky, perhaps with the exception of one organisation. I've always worked in very pacey organisations, so for me it isn't so difficult. But I can also see with people that I've worked with over time, you can understand that not everybody feels that comfortable. So I think that's one. I think the other thing for HR teams, which I noticed in AXA in particular, but I think COVID has created that an additional requirement, is how do you balance business as usual with your sort of strategic proactive work? Because there was a massive risk that you get drawn into the reactive,
sure,
and then you stall on all your big strategic initiatives. And until you sort of get going on them, they don't happen overnight. They need thinking, they need research, they need, you need to engage people on that journey. And if you're not careful, you can create really significant delays in your ambition. So,
right.
And it's something I've even personally struggled with throughout my career, actually, again, is when I've been running a very operational team, is how do I make sure I answer all the daily questions versus actually find the time to do some thinking about, and that's maybe one of my learnings. I worked with somebody many years ago who was sat in a chair and sort of almost staring into nowhere. And I said, "Oh, what are you doing?" And he said, "I'm thinking." And that's always stuck with me, because actually we all need time to think. It's not always about running and doing things very quickly. Sometimes you just need to pause. So I think everybody almost in HR at every level has to sort of think, how do you do that? Almost, some jobs can be more transactional, but there is always things, even if you're working a very transactional job, it's almost, how can I make this a better process? How can I make it a better candidate experience? How can I make a difference, rather than sort of almost being sat on the hamster wheel, just sort of running very fast and not being able to stop, which I think is common.
Definitely. And you're right. I think particularly this year has drawn that out of a lot of people. That survival mode is it's sometimes better to be seen being really busy than perhaps gazing out of a window. But you're quite right. Now is the time to build that strategy for the next 5 years, completely in what may be a new world, but keeping the business going at the same time. It's a challenge. I struggle with it personally. I have to admit, I love the ins and outs of my job, and then you suddenly think, hang on, everything's changed in recruitment. I'd better quickly get things going. But okay, so some skills to develop for HR people. I mean, within Harvey and Thompson, I'm always interested in this. Every organisation I work with, how is HR seen now? You know, how is it viewed internally within the business? Do you think? I mean, clearly you'll have a biased response.
Of course I will. They love us. No, I think actually the team have always been seen as being very supportive to the business. You know, a team where really they will do what they need to do to get the job done. So I think actually always positive in the sense of supporting what needs to happen in, you know, an HR team. I think, you know, we touch everybody. So you really have to make sure that you have that sort of service, customer centric attitude to the way you do your job. I actually think probably the difference is that now what we're trying to really focus on is how this is strategically framed. So when I arrived at Harvey and Thompson, I was actually really pleased to see lots of things there that maybe I didn't expect to see. You know, as a medium-sized business, having come out of a large corporate, you're never quite sure what you're going to find. And actually there was lots of good things there. I think our challenge is helping people understand why we're doing these things and to what end, which is more, as I say, about the strategic framing, and also making sure that, for me, it's not always doing lots of things. It's about doing a few things really well that are really impactful. And again, I think that certainly within Harvey and Thompson, there's lots of ideas, there's lots of energy, there's, you know, people really want to have a can-do attitude. So the flip side to that is making sure that you don't overcommit. And I think what I'm seeing is, you know, lots of engagement from the business. There's lots of people who have ideas, who like to collaborate with HR. And actually, you know, certainly my view is I know that I can't necessarily do everything I want to do. So this morning I had a call with some of our area managers talking about setting up a mentoring scheme, for example. You know, great that they're coming forward with ideas. I obviously can see how it fits within everything I'm trying to achieve. But absolutely great. You know, we're also working on things like corporate social responsibility. Again, we already do lots of things, but it's about creating that strategic frame, and it's also about then telling the story. Because there's, you know, there are lots of great things we do, but we haven't really thought how to tell a story, and it's really valuing how you do that. So actually, it's again, I think we're seen as being, you know, a very good team, and I think people are appreciating having that more strategic thought. And I think as time evolves, obviously our strategy will need to sort of follow where the business is going. So I think certainly, you know, being in a retail business, well, I'm never sure whether we're retail or financial services, where we're this really interesting blend of the two, really.
Indeed.
Which is one of the reasons I like it so much. But as we build our business strategies, then making sure we're really pulling the people strategy to really drive that agenda.
Excellent. And it's one of the points you make there about, as you say, deciding what fits in the strategy, but it's the communication, isn't it? And I have to admit, a lot of these conversations I've been having recently all allude to HR is quite keen to grab internal communications and have it as part of their function and strategy now. And again, in a multi-site retailer, comms is hard, isn't it? Because they're doing the job on the ground in their own little spot. I mean, does internal comms sit within your team, or do you have a separate piece, or is that work in progress?
Well, that's an interesting topic actually, because I think, I don't know if I volunteered and was happily accepted to just have a bit more focus on internal comms. So absolutely in AXA, internal comms was an integral part of my team, and I could never have done the things I needed to do without that sort of opportunity to drive communications activity. So I think for Harvey and Thompson, I would say there's a very strong communications link for stores. So typically in a store, in that multi-site environment, everything is quite structured to make sure that every store gets the same message at the same time on the same topics.
Right.
I think our challenge is to try to have communications more broadly. And interestingly, one of the things as a consequence of COVID was that our CEO now sends a weekly message to people.
That's great.
Which was really nice, and that for me was an example of where it's what I call the company internal communication. So I don't need to get involved with what I would call team and functional communications, but what I'm trying to do is to say, what are some of those company-wide topics and how do we share those with people? And what's been interesting is the work we're starting to do on corporate social responsibility very neatly says, well, actually, it isn't we need to start doing loads of things, we just need to start telling the story. And we need to find the right way of telling that story. So to be honest, comms is a very live topic. And I suppose the other thing for me that struck me was making sure that internal and external communications are aligned. Because sometimes, we have some, we're really utilising things like social media. We have a good website that's very, communicates a lot with our customers and our stakeholders and shareholders, and is great for potential candidates. But actually, sometimes those messages weren't always being shared internally. And again, for me, it's a missed opportunity, particularly around our employer brand. So for me, when I think of employer brand, it's where you can really see it, whether you're inside or outside, and it sort of blends. And actually having more alignment will just enable us to make sure that everybody sees what it is, what it really is, that it doesn't feel like it's two different things. Apart from the fact it's a brilliant brand and it's a brilliant place to work. So why would I want to share that?
Exactly. Oh, that's an interesting point. But comms has been, obviously, with so much to communicate, both strategic and operational, been a real key part this year. And I know I've seen HR been very welcoming of having it as part of the function now, which I think is a good development point for many. So let's go back to AXA a little now. So we probably spent most of our time together when you were there as you were HR director for what's now known as AXA Partners. Am I right? So this is the travel insurance and the assistance area.
Yeah, so I had different roles. I mean, I think over time. So I think when we first met, we had a very decentralised organisation. So I was the HR director for the UK-based travel business, but which was a global business unit. And then I was also the HR director for the UK business, which is, as it says, was UK. Back in 2016, there was a fairly major restructure where actually we started to create a much more centralised organisation. And at that time, I carried on with what I would call my operational UK and Ireland responsibility. So I was very much looking after the operational delivery of HR, reporting to the global head of HR. But I also then became essentially a business partner for one of the global business units. So a very interesting time, because you're working in, I always used to call it a matrix with third axis, because there always seemed to be an additional complexity. And I must admit, I really enjoyed being operating at that global level. I mean, we were lucky; we operated in 35 countries. Only had 10,000 people, which actually is a lot of people. But then across 35 countries is, in some of our countries we were very small, and we obviously had some larger markets as well. But it was always great fun working within a large global entity like AXA, with a fantastic brand, very customer centric. And AXA Partners was again quite unique. It was a global business reporting directly into Paris. So went through several mergers and fairly significant changes. So yes, very different to the role that I do today. Definitely,
and that's what I wanted to ask you really is how different. I mean, I'll always remember coming to meet you, and the office had been refurbed. Yeah, and it was, you were very proud of it, and you gave me a lot of time and a fantastic tour of the building. And I know you'd had a real key role in that, hadn't you, in changing that. But so maybe we can touch on that. But in general, how does what you do now differ from that time at AXA from an HR perspective?
So I think the difference now is that really Harvey and Thompson is a mid-sized company. I report directly to the CEO, who then works with the board. So actually, you know, I have the opportunity now to contribute to our strategy as a business. I am responsible for defining our people strategy and delivering it. So I suppose I'm really close to, you know, the business, both on a day-to-day and also on a strategic level as well. I suppose I don't have to. I suppose the main difference is when you work in a matrix, it's a big job of influencing. So if I wanted to deliver something, I would have probably 20, 30 key stakeholders that I would, across both HR and business leaders, to get an idea across. You know, now I actually work with sort of my boss and 2 other colleagues. You know, we can have a conversation at 9:15 in the morning, and by 10 o'clock I'm doing it.
Oh, it sounds heavenly, yeah.
So you know, I think when we knew that we were going to have to close the shops, I think we made the decision by 10 o'clock, and by the following day at 5 p.m. we had, I don't know, 1,200 people on furlough.
Wow.
So, and that was from having no process, no nothing. So between me being able to have a quick decision, get the process together, brief the managers, and the managers just talk to everybody, it was job done. Now, you know, that speed, you won't get that in a larger organisation to quite the same extent. But in other ways, I suppose, you know, because I had a very blended role at AXA, so I was, you know, if you like, head of an operational team, and historically I had more freedom to define my sort of strategy and plans under sort of the AXA framework. That isn't massively different, except for this time it's me. You know, there is no referral point. So, you know, I work with my colleagues to sort of make those decisions.
It sounds like that's been a nice change. That's what I'm getting. Is it sounds like you're enjoying that perhaps more autonomy and a more,
yeah,
I suppose, more manageable piece that you can influence quickly and get things done.
Absolutely. And I think when I left AXA, that was probably the key thing I was looking for. I probably had more autonomous roles. When I was at Stora Enso, almost something similar happened as to what happened at AXA. When I first joined Stora Enso in the UK, I was very autonomous, and then gradually it started to become more centralised, and I lost control to be able to do things. And as I say, being at AXA, I mean, it was a fantastic experience. I think it's where I really grew up in terms of being able to take all of my experience and really be exposed at a global level, you know, with different cultures and different challenges in a scale that I've never experienced. And it's quite nice now to come back to an organisation which is maybe feels more manageable, and actually it means that I can have that influence. So it was certainly on my probably number 1 on my criteria for my next job. That's for sure. So delighted, you know, really delighted that I'm now working there.
Excellent. So HR in general, then you've been in the industry for some time. It's clear from this conversation you still very much love it and enjoying the challenges. I mean, why? What is it about HR that gets you excited? Do you know what I mean? What keeps you here?
I think there's a couple of things. I think the first thing is when you work in HR, you actually have the opportunity to touch every point of an organisation. And I suppose a couple of times through my career, I've been, you know, partially persuaded or questioned about whether I would change my functional expertise. And every time I've thought about it, I've always thought, but I can look across the whole organisation, and I don't really want to be pushed back into only operating within one element. So that's been one thing. I love people, and I love having that opportunity to advise and influence and create something really special. And I think it's a real gift, actually, that when I embarked on my career, I'm not sure I really understood that. But as I've developed my career, you realise that you are really, you have a responsibility to do the right thing, and you have opportunities. And I think it's how you take those opportunities to help your colleagues create the very best. Because I suppose the other thing with HR is you actually can't do it alone. That's the other issue, is you have to work with others to do it. So, you know, being able to give your CEO or directors feedback that may not always be very nice, but you know, if you don't do it, you don't change anything. Exactly. And that I do genuinely feel is sometimes that's a responsibility that you're thinking, wow, okay, this is going to be tough. Other times it is about bringing new ideas and about building your own credibility with your peers and with the organisation, where if you have ideas that people will listen to you, then believe it, and then help you deliver it. And so that I think that makes it very interesting and a continual challenge. I mean, I never wake up in the morning with oh, it's another dull day. That for sure never happens. And I suppose there is this element still of, again, very young in my career when I was at Stora Enso, I remember my CEO coming in one day with a fairly significant piece of news. And he told me, and he looked at me, he said, "Are you okay?" And I just said, you know, I just expect the unexpected. And if I carry on my life like that, then I'm never going to be surprised. And, you know, maybe COVID's a good example, which of, okay, no, we just need to get on with it. So no, I think HR is a you know, I've really enjoyed it as a profession. And I also love the fact that you're very connected with the business. And I think, you know, as an HR person, and if I'm ever, you know, talking to people who are earlier in their career, my big encouragement to people is be curious and interested about the business you operate in, because probably that's been a differentiator for me, because I do like to understand what is going on, why it's going on, you know, how to make money or why things are not working, because then I can really help. If I don't understand that, I can't help. So yeah, so no, still not been lured away into another position.
Well, it's very high profile. I mean, that's one of the, I suppose you look for positives out of what's happened this year. And I mean, HR seems to have, you know, really had a defining moment, and where there have been successes around, obviously, firstly, you know, safety and keeping everyone safe, and providing that support and communication, and coming up with processes overnight, as you say, to handle certain things. And I think that's perhaps raised the bar a bit for both employees as well as, you know, customers and the board. Is, you know, HR can deliver this, as have technology in many businesses where they've had to, you know, suddenly get a contact center of 500 people all working from home in a very quick time frame. So that's also changed as well. But you're right, it's that closeness to the business, and seeing HR as, I mean, controversially, as much of a business leader as a business partner now, isn't it? And that seems to be where we're going. So, well, talking about the commercial end of it. So post COVID, as we look to 2021 and onwards, what do you think businesses are going to need to do to survive initially? Because I suspect tough times ahead with the end of the furlough scheme.
I think the first thing is to try to maintain a sense of optimism. I think COVID has clearly challenged all of us, actually, in terms of the impact it's had on all of our lives for many different reasons. And I think one of the things I've observed in H&T is that the minute we shut our stores, because we weren't comfortable to keep them open until we checked all the safety elements, our first thought was, how do we get them back open? You know, our view is, how do we get back trading? Yeah. So we didn't just wait. We wanted to have plans in place. We wanted to think through what we needed to do. And I think that's probably enabled us to really think hard about how do we get back on track? You know, and we will now start our planning for sort of 2021 and beyond, which is, yes, COVID has happened, but, you know, I suppose it's keeping your focus on your customers. And I think it's really not trying, of course the external environment impacts you, but it's really thinking hard about who are our customers, why do they need us? How do they need us? Keep doing the things that we do really well. And it's interesting, talking to people just anecdotally, it's, there's a sense that I think in some sectors we've lost this sense of customer service. I think people have got sort of, distracted and concerned about the environment they're working in, and almost forgotten that, we still need to look after customers. I think certainly for us, we are saying to people, still take really good care of our customers. Great news for us is we always have had really strong relationships with our customers. We've stood by them, even though our stores were closed. And now we're coming back out the other side. So, don't lose sight of what your purpose is. So I think stay focused, be positive, focus on your customers. I think look for opportunities. And also, I'm sure for many organisations, and I've been there many times in my past, there are times when it's just going to have to be courageous decisions. And I think it's trying to think of the greater good. So how do we try to sustain our organisations? As I say, I know in my past I've been through some pretty dark moments of when you've sat and sort of with your head in your hands saying, oh my goodness, we're really going to have to do this, which is either closing down businesses, dramatically reducing businesses, and that is really demoralising. So, and that then goes back to this point. I think one of the other things that everybody needs to think about is how we do build that resilience in ourselves. So how do you maintain that energy, the enthusiasm? How do you do the best for yourself on a very personal level to make sure you can give of your best in the workplace? And maybe one of the things through COVID, I think, is everybody's realised even more, because we knew it before, that we're all individuals. We all have a different way of managing. So for some people it's, I don't know, gaming. For some people it's exercise. For some people it's friends. For some people, it's hiding away, so we all manage very differently. But I think we all need to understand how best to preserve our resilience, because that then enables us to give of our best at all levels and to each other. I don't think I think it's just like work colleagues. I think I've been hugely supported by my team. When I've had tough days, they've been saying to me, how are you? Are you sure you're okay? As much as my colleagues do. And that's been really nice too. Maybe something I might not have expected when you're relatively new in an organisation. But I think everybody has sort of taken an opportunity to do that. But there will be more tough times, and I've been there before, and I do feel for people. We will all have tough moments as we move forward, I'm sure.
Definitely. No, thank you. So there was so final question really from me is how COVID has positively influenced the people agenda at Harvey and Thompson. Now, one thing you mentioned to me before, and we may touch on that now, was, as you say, the stores closed and you had to find a way of keeping operating. And what you mentioned and the now ongoing service you provide digitally is fantastic, and that was turned around really quickly. So tell us a little about that. That would be good to hear.
Yeah, so we realised that when we closed our stores, we knew that our customers would worry. So not only did we set up very quickly a live chat and also phone lines for people to contact us, but we then very quickly developed some digital solutions so that people could still pay money, that they still could get support. And then after that, we actually managed to find a way of actually providing pawnbroking, I would say a mixture of sort of online inquiry, followed by obviously post to value, but still with the view of trying to get people money quickly. And so I suppose, again, we were very customer orientated in terms of saying, what is it our customers need? And listening really hard to what they wanted and what support they needed. So that was actually, again, it's like most businesses. I think we all know that we need, omni-channel communications with our customers. We always know that there's deep relationships in our stores, and we know that that's hugely beneficial. But during that time with no stores open, you realise that people just felt very lost. Often people just ring up to say, you know, is my item safe? I just need to know that I've given you something and I just need to know it's safe. And we're like, it's absolutely safe. You know, it's properly secured. It'll stay there. We're working through what will happen. And people were just really reassured as a consequence. So I think that was something that was, you know, has been very positive. I think it's also, I mean, we talked a bit about it earlier. I think the communications, you know, we were very conscious that we had a split workforce, some furloughed, some not. So the CEO's weekly email would go to personal email addresses, and the feedback we had from our people was, it's so lovely to hear from you every week. So if I have spoken to nobody else or nothing else has come up, although managers were regularly in contact with people, I know I'm going to get the message on a Friday, and it's lovely to see what's happening. So, you know, that was a real sort of change, I would say. And I think the other thing is just a sense of flexibility. I think most businesses, you know, we had quite a traditional way of working. You know, we have obviously our stores, you go to the store to work. In our other office locations, people would typically always go to the office to work. Sure. And I think through this, we've proved that you can actually work more flexibly, you can work remotely. I think technology, like everybody knows, has been our best friend. And like you say, everybody's sort of got over the whole video call thing.
Yeah.
Whereas before,
it's natural now, isn't it?
Whereas people would normally do a video call but switch the camera off, and we don't do that anymore because we actually quite like to see each other. And I think just proving, it's always like any form of change management, and when they call it the burning platform, when you really have to go for it, do you know what, you just go for it. And it's surprising how quickly you can adapt. Not to say that there are some challenges along the way, but I think I think it's like most people have said, you know, things that ordinarily may have taken us 2 to 3 years to do, we've managed to do in probably 2 to 3 months. So if anybody had ever told us that was a consequence, I just don't think we would have believed them. So yeah, it's very, very interesting.
It's a natural agility that's happened in under pressure, under duress, which is brilliant, isn't it? And these are the things that are coming out. I mean, the agility piece, the comms piece. Obviously, a lot of organisations are. In fact, your former employer, I know AXA, went back. I think a couple of weeks ago, I was talking to Nicola there, and that's also a stressful time. You know, it's challenging for us as HR people trying to balance, because I'm a firm believer. I like is it hybrid working? I believe there's a term now. So today I'm at home and tomorrow I'm in the office, and I've started, you know, you start moving your diary around based on where you are, and tomorrow will be very meeting focused. Today I just have to get a lot done with no interruptions, which is, I'm kind of liking that double life almost now. And but I know some people who haven't been in an office for probably 6 months now, it's a big leap, isn't it? And we as HR, we are the custodians of that return, aren't we? Which is another challenge, I suppose.
Yeah, and we're I would say we're lucky. So actually, in fact, yesterday was our sort of first official day back. So we're operating with limited numbers in. We've also done some refurbishment whilst in fact we were closed. So actually people are going back into some nice new social space, which is looking very lovely. But I had a complete mare yesterday because I really didn't get my act together. I had a spontaneous conversation with somebody, then ran late for a meeting, and then realised I didn't have my power cable and my laptop lost battery. So by the end of the day, I was like, right, I now need to adapt to being back in the office. So, you know, we're all human. And as you say, we've all adapted to now, we've all been working from home. And I suppose some of the conversations we're having now is things like, for certain meetings, we're just going to carry on video call. Because to having half in a meeting room and half not actually really doesn't work. We've managed to make it work for the last sort of 6 months with everybody being on a video call. So actually, let's make it complicated. So again, some of those things, you know, I'm sure we're going to experience this is a bit strange being back in the office. And I refer to it to people as, we were in crisis, we're now in interim, and there will be a moment at which it becomes almost permanent, but I think we're still in this in between stage, and we need to somehow sort of work out what works, what doesn't work. But it is completely lovely to actually be able to say, I'm going to the office today. Yeah. Lovely to see my team, lovely to see my colleagues. That was, and as I say, just have that spontaneity of walking down the office and saying hi to somebody.
Yeah.
So nice.
Exactly. Especially when it's been so long. That's what I've struggled with. You know, in some cases then we've got someone at our office who, I think they've lost an incredible amount of weight. I won't name them, won't embarrass them, but, you know, I didn't recognise them. Do you know what I mean? It's just like, how fantastic. And they've done all sorts of great things during this period, and just good to hear people's stories. Hey, look, thank you so much for your time. I know you're very busy, but thank you for sharing your experiences of HR life under COVID at Harvey and Thompson. And it sounds like the business is in a great place. You've got some great plans and strategies going forward, and you're loving what probably doesn't feel like a new job anymore. But I still feel like it's a new job for you, I suppose, at this point. But you know, thanks a lot for your time. Obviously, if anyone wants to reach out to Frances, you're on LinkedIn. I guess that's the best place to find you.
Absolutely.
But enjoy your weekend, which is in sight nearly, isn't it? And I will obviously be in touch with you soon again, Frances. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Simon. It's been great.
Cheers. Bye.
See ya. Bye.